Welcome back to the Death Row and Executions channel. My name is Paco Rivera. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates and more Death Row news. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. Also, check out my other channel here on YouTube called The Maximum Sentence, where I cover recent crimes and convictions. There will be a link for that as well. Stephen Lawayne Nelson is scheduled to be executed in Texas on February 5th of this year, 2025. Stephen Nelson is another one of those I didn't do it death row inmates in this country. And just like others like him in the past, the I didn't do it death row inmates, Ivan Cantu, Robert Frada, and Richard Glossip, who hasn't been executed yet, and Melissa Lucio, who also hasn't been executed and recently even got a judge to find her innocent, though she remains on death row in Texas for now. If a death row inmate hollers out enough times, I didn't do it, he or she is going to get anti-death penalty advocates and a few celebrities on board quickly to tell everyone, hey, guess what? He didn't do it. And then there's this guy, Rodney Reed, on death row in Texas for the 1996 abduction, brutal, indecent assault, and murder of 19-year-old Stacy Stites, whose fiancé was a police officer and they were to be married in 3 weeks. Rodney Reed became a suspect because he was known to have assaulted women on multiple occasions, and after his DNA was tested against evidence in the murder of Stacy Stites, he was a match. Reed was brought in for questioning, and he was informed by detectives that they were investigating a murder, that he needs to be truthful with them. He needs to be honest with them. They're investigating a murder. He was shown photos of Stacy Stites. He was asked if he knew the young woman. Rodney Reed flat out denied knowing Stacy. I don't know who she is. I never met her. Never seen her before in my life. When detectives informed Reed that his DNA was found inside of her, he later said, oh, yeah, okay, she and I have been having a secret love affair, and we made love the night before she was found dead. A well-educated, intelligent, and decent 19-year-old woman who comes from a good family, engaged to be married in 3 weeks, invitations to the wedding already going out, is having a love affair with a known street thug and abuser of women. Not buying it. And a jury didn't buy it either. And he was sentenced to death. However, he does have a whole lot of people out there believing his cockamamie story to explain away how his DNA got inside of Stacy. Oh, they made love, but he didn't kill her. Because if a death row inmate hollers out enough times, I didn't do it, he's going to get people on his side. Reed also says that the reason he lied the first time was because he was afraid for his life if it got out that he was having an affair with a white woman. Clinton Roderick Dobson was born in 1982. By the year 2011, he was 28 years old and was a pastor at the Northpointe Baptist Church in Arlington, Texas. On the morning of March 3rd, 2011, evidence showed that Stephen Nelson made his way into the Northpointe Baptist Church, where he encountered Pastor Clint Dobson and 69-year-old church secretary Judy Elliott. Nelson pointed a BB gun at Clint and Judy, and according to reports, then ordered them to tie each other up, though I don't know how that's even possible. Both Pastor Clint and the older woman, Judy, were later found bound with duct tape. Nelson then proceeded to steal a laptop, money, and credit cards from both Pastor Clint and Judy. At some point, it appears he began struggling with Pastor Clint, and he badly beat the pastor, then placed a plastic bag over his head and suffocated him to death. He also beat Judy severely, causing her to suffer severe blunt force trauma to her head and a broken jaw, and left her for dead. But Judy survived. Stephen Nelson had also taken Judy's car keys and fled from the church in her now stolen car. Now, even though doctors at the hospital did not think Judy was going to remain alive much longer, as she had already suffered a heart attack while she was hospitalized, Judy did survive her injuries. She was released from the hospital 2 weeks later and underwent 5 months of therapy and rehabilitation. A permanent combination of screws and other metal components were used to support Judy's face. She also had experienced memory loss. However, when she was finally able to answer investigators' questions, she did say that there was more than one man in the church that day. Now, what I'm going to tell you is imperative to keep in mind as I get further into the story of this case. The girlfriend of a man named Anthony Springs later testified that Stephen Nelson arrived at her house wanting a ride in Anthony Springs' car. This tells me that Nelson used the stolen car just to get away from the church and later disposed of the vehicle so he's not caught inside of it. Springs' girlfriend stated that Nelson said he had credit cards and will fill Springs' car with gas for free if Anthony Springs will drive the car to wherever Nelson wants to go. Nelson and Springs later met up with another friend named Clifford Jefferson, and reports indicate that the three of them went on a shopping spree using credit cards stolen from Pastor Clint Dobson and Judy Elliott. A male cross-dresser going by the name of Tracy Nixon testified at Nelson's trial while wearing women's clothing and bright pink lipstick, according to the news reports on that trial. Tracy Nixon stated that on the day after the church murder, he picked up Stephen Nelson and they went partying that night at a Dallas nightclub. He said Nelson was wearing brand new clothes. After the club, they went back to Tracy Nixon's house where they spent the night. Investigators following leads had led them to Stephen Nelson, and he was arrested for the murder of Pastor Clint Dobson and the brutal assault of Judy Elliott. Nelson's fingerprint was found on the wrist rest from where the laptop had been stolen. During a search of his apartment, sneakers with blood on them was confirmed to be Pastor Clint Dobson's blood. And items stolen from the church were also found in his home. When Nelson was interrogated, he flat out denied having anything to do with the assault and murder. He admitted to being at the church, but that his only role was to stand outside as a lookout and that he never went inside. He said that his two friends, Anthony Springs and Clifford Jefferson, are the ones that went inside and robbed, assaulted Clint and Judy, and killed the pastor. And that he waited outside the whole time, not knowing that anyone was going to get hurt. And he admitted that he used the credit cards and drove the stolen car. When investigators told him that his fingerprint was found inside the church and that blood from the victim was on the soles of his sneakers found in his apartment, he changed his story. He then said that he did go inside the church for a moment to reach over and grab the laptop. That's it. That's why they found the fingerprint and blood on his shoes. Because investigators determined that Nelson, Springs, and Jefferson were together later that day shopping with stolen credit cards, both Springs and Jefferson were also arrested and charged with murder. However, as the investigation continued, investigators concluded that the murder happened between 11 o'clock in the morning and 12 noon. During that 1 hour window, cell phone towers showed that Anthony Springs' cell phone was about 30 miles away from the crime scene. Clifford Jefferson stated that he was attending a class at the university that morning, but for some reason investigators were unable to fully verify that alibi. And then you have the church secretary. Months after the crime occurred and having suffered severe brain trauma and memory loss, stating that she saw more than one perpetrator that morning. But how reliable is that statement? given the injuries that she sustained. As we can see from this report, during the time of the trial in 2012, the prosecution stressed that Nelson acted alone. Sure, the defense countered that by saying that there was no fingerprint or DNA evidence belonging to Steven Nelson found on the bag that was used to suffocate Pastor Dobson. Yeah, but what they don't tell you is that nobody's fingerprints or DNA was found on that bag. And even if Steven Nelson's fingerprints was found on the plastic bag, he will probably say that, yeah, okay, but all I did was pick up the bag and I handed it to the other guy who was wearing gloves. Because just like Rodney Reed, they are always going to have a cockamamie story to fit the evidence. What we have here, looking at it simply, is a case where maybe two guys got away with murder, or they are in fact innocent. We don't know. There wasn't any proof linking Springs and Jefferson to the crime, linking them to the church. Nothing. So the charges of robbery and murder at the church for Anthony Springs and Clifford Jefferson were eventually dropped and they were released. However, Steven Nelson is not innocent. The evidence clearly shows that he was inside that church during the time of the robbery and very likely during the time of the murder. Look, most states have a law in place that doesn't care if a person was just a lookout or just a getaway driver. And this is Texas. Steven Nelson admits that he participated in the robbery of the church. If an innocent victim is murdered during the robbery, he is equally responsible. In Texas, they have what is called the law of parties, a law that took effect in Texas during the early 1970s, which clearly states that a getaway driver or a lookout can be charged with murder in Texas, which means that individuals are criminally responsible for helping others commit a felony, even if they didn't personally commit the crime. This means that a getaway driver or a lookout can face the same penalties as the person who actually carried out a murder. So for all of Steven Nelson's supporters out there that say he cannot be charged with murder because he didn't do the killing, that is incorrect. Something of note, after Steven Nelson was indicted and being held at Tarrant County Jail while awaiting trial, he killed a fellow inmate in the jail named Jonathan Holden. Holden was serving jail time for theft. Word has it from the jail that Nelson murdered Holden because Holden had used a derogatory racial term that was overheard by other inmates. According to Pastor Clint Dobson's obituary, he modeled the love of Christ. For his church, he was shepherd and servant. Clint's life was a picture of the love of God, family, and his lifelong friends. Clint was passionate about music, teaching himself to play the guitar and the piano. He loved sports and told many stories about his years of football and baseball and working on projects with his father. Clint was a graduate of Clear Lake High School in 2000 before entering Baylor University. He graduated in 2004 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology and obtained his Master of Divinity degree in 2008 from George W. Truett Theological Seminary, where he was named Preacher of the Year in 2008. It was during his time at Baylor that he met and then married the love of his life, Laura Roseman. No couple shared more love between them and with others than Clint and Laura, a couple that lit up the heart of everyone around them. Clint served as pastor of Northpointe Baptist Church from 2007 to 2008 and Northpointe Baptist Church from 2008 until his death. The foundation of Clint's life was the Word of God. Please remember to hit the subscribe button for more of these death row and upcoming execution stories. You can also follow me on Facebook for updates. There will be a link to my Facebook in the description below. My name is Paco Rivera. Take care and bye for now.